Hi, how are you? Well, in my last video I said I would try to do something about character and character development, or character arc, which is commonly referred to as. And I have been reading recently on the internet, and I tend to agree with what I'm reading, that there are no real rules to follow when it comes to developing a character or inventing a character. As if you kind of go looking for rules and things like that and regulations in characters and development and writing, you're unintentionally handcuffing yourself together, because suddenly you've got an idea of a character and you're thinking more about the rules and regulations than the character itself, and you kind of end up not developing the character the way you hope to. So in other words, write the character any way you like. It doesn't even have to tie in with the story. Character development can be done on its own before you even start writing a book. I've got character A, the central character in my book, character B, a backup character, and character C, a kind of distant character just to fill in particular scenes, and character A will have a fair bit of a description about them, background and general ideas and characteristics. You're putting effort into character A. Character B will have, a very simple name: Tim, Terry, Colin, Anne, Maria, something like that. A short name. You don't have to go overboard with it, and you don't have to describe them too much either, because they're just kind of a B character. You can say whether they're short or tall or something like that, whether they're young or old, but you're not blowing the character up too much and making it too noticeable, because people will kind of wonder, is this a central character as well? So you kind of want to keep character B simple. And character C, the background character, you can hardly see them at all. You're just a person, referring to a person walking past the front window, or a person, a man or a woman getting in and getting out of the train, or getting on the bus or getting off the bus. They're just there, very basically. You hardly put any effort into them at all, because they're not that important. So that's pretty much the way I write. And not rules as such, they're just my ideas in my head and how I write. And anyway, I'll just tell you a little story about something that happened to me years and years and years ago when I was a young lad in school, and I was about 13 or 14, something like that. And it was kind of a creative writing class there, with kind of, brainstorming session or something you could call it like that. And believe it or not, I didn't stick school out, believe it or not. I'm not that academic, believe it or not. So it's just, but anyway, go back. And, there was just a little joke doing around about my vampire teeth. And the teacher thought it was funny as well. And I knew everybody was just kind of poking fun. They weren't being serious or anything like that. They weren't being smart Alex or anything like that. And then he gave me an idea for a story. That's where a character came from, and suddenly the story came from. A vampire who did not know he was a vampire. It can come together like that, out of the blue like that. And anyway, other ways I can find my characters is just by looking around me, and I can take a complete and total stranger and use it as a baseline, a very base baseline, simple. A tall person getting on a train, or a short person getting on a bus, and start from there, develop from there. I'll be doing some more travelling next month. I'm going to Glastonbury to visit a family member who's been living over there for a couple of years, and I'll probably use that as an opportunity to go character developing as well. And I sometimes find a character and I'll write it up in my head and remember it, and sometimes I don't, because sometimes nothing kind of comes together, if you kind of follow what I'm saying there. Regular folk, sometimes there's just nothing there, and then every now and again a complete stranger walks past you somewhere along like that, and then suddenly you've got a character developing there. That's the way I do sometimes. And anyway, as I was basically saying there at the start of the video, there are no actual set of rules to follow. Like I said, if you like rules, that's fine. There's plenty of videos out there on YouTube detailing how to write, and grammar rules and structure rules and things like that, and they mean well. I've watched loads of them myself, but I find that I'm better off making it all up as I go along. if there's a general idea, and follow a general idea, a general platform, follow a general platform, but I don't handcuff myself together. I have an artistic license to do whatever I like. Take, for example, another example I could give you is, at the moment on television, there's so many cop shows there, cops and robbers, police shows and things like that. They're kind of all colliding into each other, and they're all too similar. There's nothing outstanding there at the moment. If you think way back to the 90s when you had Inspector Morse on television, I quite like that, and I have the books up here as well. And they're unconventional, a cop who, is not a typical cop, and it worked, and sometimes that can help. Take, for example, if you're writing a superhero book, you don't have to follow conventional notions of superheroes. There can be anti-hero books, and, you can get ideas from the television and get ideas from the movies and things like that, but just use them as ideas and try to develop the ideas yourself in the back of your mind. Daydream about them or something like that, and then write a few ideas down, and use those ideas as a baseline to develop your character. And it comes together. You can develop your character before you develop your book and before you develop your storyline. Your character can be very, very basic at the very beginning, and as you write about them, they can develop so that they can grow as you're writing the story and writing the book. Your central character, halfway through your story, you can just mention about their schooling years or their college years or things like that, or just throw in a story about how they did their first driving test or something like that, to give you some background in that character. There's always little bits you can throw in along the way. It's kind of different when you're going into historical epics from a couple of 100 years ago. You do need a very inventive mind there, because really the Pirates of the Caribbean kind of, it's quite extraordinary. I thought that was actually a very good set of movies, in fact. Johnny Depp did very well there. And, he kind of took a pirate and gave us a pirate that we didn't have before, a completely new type of pirate. And that's kind of, I think, why it worked so well. It was unconventional. It wasn't, a chalk and cheese kind of character. So, that can work as well. So anyway, I don't want the video going on too long, or my voice will give up again. So that's it. I'll be off on my travels again next month, and I'll make a few more videos later on. So good luck for now.